Imagine this. It's January 1959. You've got 9 young hikers, incredibly capable, all students. They set out on this really challenging skiing expedition deep into the desolate, snowy wilderness of Russia's Ural Mountains. This was meant to be, the adventure of a lifetime. But what searchers found weeks later, well, it was a nightmare that still haunts us today. They find a tent ripped open. From the inside, bodies scattered across the frozen landscape, someone just inexplicable crushed bones, one missing her tongue and eyes. And the official cause of death, it was declared simply as an unknown compelling force. Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving deep into one of the most enduring and frankly chilling mysteries of the 20th century, the Dyatlov Pass Incident. We're going to try and unravel the strange circumstances, the truly horrifying discoveries, and, well, the countless theories that have tried to explain what happened, tried and often failed, right, on that frozen slope back in 1959. Our mission here is to give you a clear understanding of this enduring enigma, help you grasp the facts, but also why this mystery just keeps pulling people in.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating about Dyatlov Pass isn't just the bizarre details, though those are definitely part of it. It's how the sheer vagueness of that official conclusion, an unknown compelling force, has kept this story alive for, what, 6 decades now?
Exactly.
It taps into something really primal in us, doesn't it? That human need for answers, especially when you're faced with something completely unexplainable. And this particular mystery, it seems to defy all the simple explanations. It just draws people in, makes them want to explore every single angle. It's like a puzzle you just can't put down.
And it all kicks off with this remarkable group.
Yeah.
Led by Igor Dyatlov, he's a 23-year-old engineering student. He put together this group of 9 others, all equally impressive people for this really ambitious skiing trip. Destination, Ural Mountain, deep in the northern Urals. So 7 men, 2 women, all young, healthy, skilled in survival, experienced mountaineers, skiers. They knew what they were doing.
Absolutely. These weren't novices wandering into the wilderness.
It's not at all. They started their journey January 25th. Made it to Vizhai, which is like the last inhabited settlement back then. Then they pushed off into the wild. Heavy snow did slow them down a bit, and one member actually got sick, had to turn back early, so that left 9 hikers to continue, and then they just vanished.
Vanished until the search parties went out.
Right. When they didn't return by their expected date, search teams were sent out. February 26th, rescuers finally discovered the campsite, and what they saw, it just made absolutely no sense, none whatsoever. The group's tent, it was still standing, partly snow-covered, but the canvas, it had been sliced open from the inside.
From the inside, that's crucial.
Yeah, and their boots, their coats, all their supplies were still neatly arranged inside the tent. It was as if the hikers had just fled in sheer unimaginable panic. Out into the brutal sub-zero cold, barefoot and half-dressed. I mean, can you even imagine the kind of immediate terror that would make seasoned explorers abandon shelter like that?
Exactly. It speaks to some kind of overwhelming instantaneous threat, something that gave them no time to even grab boots. So following the tracks in the snow, which led downhill from the tent, searchers found the first 2 bodies. They were near the edge of a small forest, under this big cedar tree, shoeless, dressed only in their underwear.
In sub-zero temperatures.
Unbelievable. And they had burns on their hands and feet, almost as if they desperately tried to start a fire, or maybe even climb the tree for safety or observation.
Wow.
Then, 3 more bodies, including Dyatlov himself, were found nearby, positioned almost as if they had been trying to crawl back towards the tent, but just succumbed to the cold. Hypothermia.
Okay, so those first 5, mainly hypothermia, maybe some desperation attempts, but the last 4.
The remaining 4. They weren't found until months later, May actually. Buried under many feet of snow in a ravine. And their condition was, well, truly baffling. That's where things get really strange.
And the condition of those last bodies, that's where this story truly becomes, well, incomprehensible, isn't it? What were those specific details that just completely stumped investigators?
Absolutely. The contrast between these bodies and the first 5 was stark and deeply disturbing. 2 of them, Lyudmila Dubinina in particular, had shattered ribs, massive internal injuries, like they'd been hit by an enormous force, maybe a car crash level of force.
But externally?
That's the thing. One man, Semyon Zolotaryov, had a completely crushed skull. And yes, as you mentioned, Lyudmila Dubinina was also missing her tongue, her eyes, part of her lips. Yet, bizarrely, there were no external signs of trauma. No significant bruises, no cuts, no signs of a struggle on their skin or clothing.
So like the injuries came from the inside out. or some kind of pressure wave?
It's incredibly hard to picture, like an overwhelming, blunt impact that somehow left no surface marks. Just doesn't fit typical injury patterns. And adding to this really unsettling mystery, some of their clothes later tested positive for significant levels of radioactivity.
Radioactivity? Okay, wait, where would that come from?
Good question. And nearby, completely unrelated witnesses, other hiking groups, meteorologists reported seeing strange lights, glowing orange lights or flying spheres in the sky around the time the hikers likely died.
Okay, so you have a tent ripped from the inside, a panicked barefoot escape into freezing cold, bizarre internal injuries with no external signs, radiation, strange lights. Yet the official explanation of an unknown compelling force suddenly sounds, well, inadequate, doesn't it? It just doesn't sit right. So what are some of the leading theories people have come up with over the years to try and make sense of this whole puzzle?
Well, the most common ones, especially early on, was an avalanche. You know, it seems like a straightforward, natural explanation for a mountain tragedy.
Makes sense on the surface.
The idea is maybe a sudden slab avalanche hit the tent, panicked them, they cut their way out and fled downhill. However, detailed geological and meteorological analyses have really cast serious doubt on this.
How so?
For one, the slope where the tent was pitched wasn't really steep enough for a typical, powerful avalanche, maybe a small slide, but enough to cause that panic and those injuries. Plus, the tent itself wasn't buried deep, which you'd expect, and the nature of those crushing injuries. It just doesn't quite match typical avalanche trauma patterns, which often involve asphyxiation or more widespread, less localized blunt force.
Okay, so the avalanche theory has some holes. If not that, what else? I know one line of thinking points to something, well, far more sinister than just nature.
Indeed. Another very persistent theory, and one that gained a lot of traction during the Cold War especially, suggests the hikers stumbled onto something they weren't supposed to see, like a secret Soviet military experiment.
The military testing angle.
Exactly. The Ural Mountains were incredibly remote. A perfect spot, really, for testing new weapons, maybe rockets, maybe even something more exotic back in the 50s. So this raises an unsettling thought. Could the group have been accidentally or maybe even deliberately exposed to chemical weapons tests, or caught in the shockwave of an experimental explosion, or perhaps a low-altitude missile impact? The radioactive clothing certainly adds fuel to that fire, as do those reports of glowing orbs or strange lights. It all kind of feeds into this idea of a possible military mishap and subsequent cover-up to protect classified operations. And, this theory resonates with that deep-seated distrust of government secrecy, especially from that era.
That's a compelling argument for the military theory. Definitely fits some pieces. But what about the lack of, concrete proof? Like no shrapnel found, no definitive chemical residue reported beyond the radiation on the clothes. How do people explain that?
Yeah, that's precisely why it remains a theory, not, a proven fact. Proponents often argue that the lack of evidence is actually part of the cover-up.
The absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence in this case.
Kind of. The argument goes that maybe the area was thoroughly cleaned up afterwards, or perhaps the specific type of test or weapon used left minimal traceable residue, especially after weeks in the snow. It's just very difficult to prove or disprove definitively without access to classified Soviet-era military archives, which, well, good luck getting those.
Right.
Then, of course, you have the more speculative paranormal or 14 angles that many people are drawn to. Local indigenous Mansi people, for instance, had legends about the area. They apparently considered the mountain, Kualachiok, dangerous, sometimes calling it Dead Mountain. Whether that's relevant or just folklore, who knows?
And those glowing lights.
And those glowing orbs in the sky, yeah, which some have interpreted as possible UFOs. That definitely opens the door to more extraordinary, shall we say, explanations, though again, no hard evidence.
Okay, what about the more scientific, but still kind of mind-bending theories? I remember reading something about infrasound. Could that explain crushed ribs and, well, missing eyes?
Right, the infrasound theory. It's quite compelling from a psychological perspective, actually. It proposes that very low-frequency sound waves, sound below the range of human hearing, could have been generated by strong winds interacting with the specific topography of the mountain, Kholat Shekl.
Like a natural sound weapon.
Sort of. The idea is that this imperceptible sound can still powerfully affect the human brain. It can supposedly induce feelings of intense dread, overwhelming panic, nausea, disorientation, maybe even a physical sensation of pressure or vibration. This could theoretically explain the irrational panic, the cutting the tent, the chaotic barefoot flight. It hits the right psychological notes.
But the physical trauma.
That's the problem. As you pointed out, it's much, much harder to see how infrasound could directly cause severe physical injuries like shattered ribs or a crushed skull. It might explain the panic and the flight, but probably not the lethal injuries found on the last 4 bodies.
So another piece, but not the whole puzzle.
Seems that way. And finally, some have whispered about a wild animal attack, a bear, maybe wolves. But investigators found absolutely no signs of that. No animal tracks around the site, no claw marks, no bite marks on the bodies. And the tent, while cut, wasn't ripped to shreds like you might expect in a frenzied animal attack. The supplies inside were still relatively neat, it just doesn't fit.
So after all that, the Soviet investigation basically threw up its hands and ended with that chillingly vague statement. The hikers died due to an unknown compelling force. Case closed. But of course, it wasn't really closed, was it?
Precisely. That official conclusion, while seemingly shutting the door, actually blew it wide open for decades of speculation, amateur investigation books, documentaries, everything. It perfectly encapsulates the profound mystery of it all. It leaves so much room for interpretation, for the human imagination to try and fill in those terrifying blanks.
And even today, you have researchers, scientists, conspiracy theorists, everyone still arguing over what truly happened on that slope. Was it an avalanche, but really weird one? A military cover-up still hidden? UFOs? Paradoxical undressing due to hypothermia combined with something else? Or just something we still can't comprehend? The mountain itself, where it all happened, now bears their leader's name, Dyatlov Pass. And, every winter people still go out there retracing their steps, looking for answers in the snow.
The enduring nature of this mystery, its absolute refusal to just yield a simple, satisfying answer, it really reminds us, doesn't it? That even with dedicated investigation, some truths might just remain elusive, hidden by the elements or by time or maybe even by human design. It makes you wonder, what does this tell us about the limits of our knowledge, especially in situations like this where the evidence itself is so contradictory and the context is just so isolated and extreme?
The truth of what killed those 9 young adventurers back in 1959 might genuinely forever remain buried beneath the ice and snow of the Urals. So what do you think really happened that night on Dyatlov Pass? Was it simple human error compounding, nature's fury in some bizarre form, or something truly more sinister, sometimes the most terrifying mysteries? Well, they're the ones we'll never truly solve.